So introduction. Teamwork, scholarships, character building, mental health benefits, and I could keep listing, but rowing has a lot of very unique benefits to the sport. Um, However, it is a sport that is mostly accessible to the upper white class. And so my forum topic is about addressing these diversity issues in the sport. So why is rowing not diverse? And these are the current demographics of rowing. So right now, like I said, rowing is currently for people mostly with higher socioeconomic status and is not a very diverse sport. And this is an example of that. 77% of all women that participated in rowing, I identified as being white, with just 5% being Hispanic, 3% is Asian, and only 2% identifying as black, which ranks rowing in the bottom third least diverse sports out of the 45 NCAA sports polled, which the NCAA is the National Collegiate Athletics Association. And another thing I'll touch on in a future slide is that in 2018, 85% of both athletic directors and head coaches in the 45 sports were white. Another issue is that rowing has also had gender discrimination when the sport was fairly new. And it was very male dominated for about 70 years, and it was considered a manly sport then. So why are most rowers higher socioeconomic status? It's mostly because of price. Rowing is a very expensive sport. It has things like expensive boathouse memberships, boats, oars, other things like that, needed gear for the sport. So why is rowing equipment so expensive? Rowing equipment is very specialized for the sport, particularly just to be only used for rowing, and it is almost constantly in high demand with the limited market. To combat these prices, if you're a club, you need a larger organization or high fees to enter the club to be able to pay for the equipment like this, and this is an example of that. Quads can cost up to like $30,000, and even having a used one is typically above $10,000 just for a singular boat. And just having costs like this for one boat is very difficult to manage, especially if you're a big club or something like that. It's a very large cost to have everyone row on the water with a singular boat costing that much, and that's why it's typically for better off people. So why are a lot of rowers white? It's been closed for a very long time, and pretty much for the 150 years that rowing has been around, it's existed with discrimination. And it was intentionally like this. It was intentionally a prestigious sport to make the people that were in rowing feel elite and just to keep it for more the wealthy. Like I said earlier, having 85% of coaches and athletic directors be white, if you are from a different background or anything like that, it might make you feel uncomfortable about joining, which I found out in an interview with the founder of Comunidad, Alejandra Tress. And she touched on this, saying that Latino youth, or really anyone from a different background, might not feel comfortable in a predominantly white setting. And something else I also found in that interview was that she said a lot of Latino immigrants don't know how to swim, or they can be afraid of the water, anything like that. And if you're afraid of the water or you don't know how to swim, you're probably likely to not go out rowing on a boat in the water. This is my service action. I did a presentation to the Vashon Island Rowing Club board. So the need I was addressing. The need I was addressing is rowing being a not diverse sport. And the reason I was addressing this is because I want people to be able to experience stuff like strong teamwork and camaraderie, things like that, which are unique to the sport, and just as well as other benefits, things like that. So for my project, I wanted to support the Vashon Island Rowing Club and just trying to create more diversity in rowing, particularly for the large large Latino youth population on the island. So what I did is I made a slideshow, and I made a detailed slideshow. I presented that to the VIRC board, and I compiled all the research that I gathered from the beginning to the end of the project, and I presented that. And these are a couple of the key findings from my slideshow. Is that barriers for low-income families, Latino families, in general, are very real. Things like transportation is hard, especially because rowing is not on a school campus or anything like that. And so you need a way to get to the boathouse. And I found that Latino families, parents, low-income parents, things like that, often work multiple jobs and don't have a way to drive their kids to a sport. And so this probably needs support to drive. Other things like language as well, not knowing how to swim, and I'll talk about solutions in a moment. So what I learned from my service action and this project in general. I definitely learned a lot more about this topic than I initially thought I would. I've met with like a ton of really helpful people throughout the span of this project. To mention a couple, I met with Sean Waldron, who is pretty much head of the National Non-Rowing Club. I met with Alejandra Tres, who is the founder of Comunidad, the Latino population on the island. And I met with Dave Harvey, who is one of the founders of Tacoma Rowing, which they have a ton of great programs, which I'll talk about in a moment. Also, I learned that sending emails, presenting, everything like that really isn't as hard as it seems through thought. But it was a bit of a struggle making the service action presentation. It just took a bit longer than I initially hoped it would, which ties into my next thing. I just wish I allowed a bit more time for different parts of this project. The solutions I think will work. These are the solutions I think will work best when we put them into practice. So first, removing financial barriers. Scholarship funds can help this. This can help like any financial issues that either the family might have or the club might have. Also partnering with larger organizations, to name one, the Pocock Foundation. That can help a lot because they have more funds to dedicate to this type of thing, and also they can just support your club in general. Also, having a team equipment library can help a lot so that people don't have to buy expensive layers needed for rowing. For example, wool socks, wool layers, coats, things like that. And also getting sponsors and partners is just a great idea in general because they enable a lot of my other solutions to be possible. Recruiting. Recruiting is very important because a lot of people haven't experienced a sport like rowing. And so presenting at events can provide like information that could make more people join rowing, because if you know what to expect from something, you'll probably be a bit more inclined to join it if you already know what you're getting into. Partnering with organizations serving different groups overall is also a good idea, like Comunidad, which I said is the Latino youth population on the island. Having Learn to Row days is also a good idea, which kind of ties into presenting. It shows you what the sport is like a bit more. And that's actually how I ended up joining the team. I was a little bit hesitant at first. And then I did a Learn to Row day over the summer, and I thought it was cool, and I joined the team. Also offering free swim lessons to address the issue I was talking about earlier of some people not knowing how to swim. Really for all ages. And even if the people don't end up joining rowing, it still builds communities with other people, and it might get other people in that community to join. And then also having an inclusive team culture. This is also very key, because you want people to feel welcome, you want them to come back, you don't want them to just stop. You can ask yourself, like, what would make someone feel welcome? What would make them want to come back? What would make them want to stay to try and help us? And also offering transportation support, like I said earlier, if getting to the boathouse is some kind of barrier, this could be like just anyone that's willing to. It could be a parent, a volunteer, and having a mentorship program. This could like just someone to ask questions to on the team. This would be like an experienced rower with a new rower, just to ask questions to have to know someone on the team. It can also just make you a bit more comfortable being with new people around the team to begin with. It's also kind of like the 8th grade Team Wonder system that we have. In conclusion, my issue is important because of all the unique benefits that rowing has as a sport. But diversifying rowing is a hard challenge to tackle because of all of the intentional old barriers, things like it being intentionally prestigious that I mentioned earlier. Things like financial barriers and transportation availability. Addressing these problems is hard, but it is possible with efforts to create just a more inclusive culture, aiding financially, and partnering with organizations serving diverse people like Comunidad. And that's the end. Thank you for listening. And any questions? Yeah.
You said earlier that rowing was the third least diverse sport. What were the other least diverse?
I don't actually know. I didn't look into that. I only looked